Hey there, this is Daniel. I've been asked to provide some video commentary on what some different groups are doing around the commandment keeping movement. And the reason why is because I have friends who come into this movement from all different kinds of backgrounds, and they're excited. They've been convinced that we should celebrate the commandments of Leviticus 23, and we should celebrate the holidays, and we should keep the Sabbath, and we should keep the Nitric Oxide. And then they find themselves going into different communities, and they get very uncomfortable because of some of the different things that they're encountering. Some of it seems a little bit weird. Some of it seems a little bit off. But the problem is they can't vet a lot of these churches off of really anybody else, because within the community there isn't a lot of discussion about how we're handling doctrine. To some degree, doctrine is somewhat of a nasty word, right? People don't want to speak about being people don't want to deal with how unhitching yourself from Christian orthodoxy it can sometimes lead you into very negative directions. You can go off in tangents. You can completely throw out the baby with the bathwater. And yeah, sure, maybe they got that Sunday is on the Sabbath wrong. But did they get everything wrong? Did they get all their theology wrong? Well, certainly no. And I obviously don't think anybody thinks they get everything wrong. But the problem is when you start from scratch and you try to build a religion, you can end up in a lot of problems. And then the other problem is when you don't have a lot of accountability. Considering we do not have seminaries that are Christian commandment-keeping seminaries that promote celebrating the Sabbath and celebrating the holidays, keeping the dietary laws, keeping some of the other laws that make us distinct from other Christian sects, we don't have a lot of authority figures. And to be honest, a lot of people, they'll develop a church and then they won't really want to speak about what's going on in other groups. And I get that. If you're a leader in a group, I understand why you wouldn't want to do that. But the problem is then you have people coming in from the outside. They're coming into this community and they have to wade through all of this stuff. Let's be honest, a lot of it is rough around the edges. And I've been asked to do a series where I go through what some of the different groups are doing in the community, just to kind of unpack it, to analyze it, to give feedback. I have a very critical eye. It's something that I do professionally in my career in terms of helping people become better writers. So, that's something that I believe I have a great talent for. And so I'm hoping that I can lend my abilities and an analytical eye and my biblical knowledge and, go through these different churches and really try to see what's going on under the hood. What's making them tick? Because like I said, unfortunately, while, they may be good on them because they're keeping the Sabbath or they're keeping the holy days or whatever, there is a lot of just mixed up stuff and problematic stuff and harmful things. And I think we can sometimes be willing to look past that because we're so excited about, we finally found a group that keeps the Sabbath, or we finally found a group that affirms, this. But the problem is what do they not affirm, or what other things do they stand for? So today I'm going to be dealing with a video from a Rood Awakening, which is an organization, I believe, in North Carolina or South Carolina. And this is their Passover 2022 video. It says Passover 2022 preview. I haven't seen this video. I haven't looked at it. It was submitted to me by somebody to talk about. So this is going to be a live reaction, and I'll be honest, I'm probably going to be rather troubled. I'll just say that by what I'm about to see, and I'll try to keep my comments constructive. I can't guarantee I'll never be maybe a little bit harsh or a little bit strong, because I do tend to have a strong reaction to things like heresy, to be honest. So we'll do this together. We'll see how this goes. It's going to be kind of casual. Just imagine you're sitting at the home, sofa with me and the kind of things that I would say. I'll try not to pause it too much. I may have to pause it a little bit just to keep up with what's going on. And I really have no idea what to expect, because there's all kinds of flavors out here. And I've seen some of the things this group does. And I am not on the same page as them. But I'll start out by saying, yes, I'm very grateful that they are commemorating Passover. And I'll start there. I'll start with a compliment. I think it's a great thing to commemorate the holidays of Leviticus 23. Beyond that, I don't know. We're going to find out. All right, let's get started.
This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth.
Help others find truth. Yeah, this is a common thing groups to do, is they will make it about truth.
You are very, very patient. We told you Passover was going to be in March.
Okay.
Wait, we have to wait for the barley. We have to wait for a new moon.
All right, I'm going to pause right here. Okay, so before we get into this, automatically you're like, wait, what's going on? He's talking about a holiday, like they don't know what it is. Yeah, there are groups that do not accept the authority of Jews to preserve their calendar. And they think that the Bible is giving them the authority to figure out when the holiday should be kept based on certain scriptures that indicate when certain months are. The problem with this is that the Bible really doesn't give you enough working knowledge to create a calendar, no matter what. And if somebody tells you otherwise, they're lying to you. You have to make inferences. You have to create adjustments. You have to put in certain calculations. There's just a lot. You'll notice there is no part of the Bible where it really lays it out. It has to be inferred because it assumes a working calendar. And I personally believe the Jews were given this responsibility to preserve the calendar, and they do a great job of it. And honestly, I find it rather offensive when people want to make their own. Not to mention, it's very disruptive to the body to do it your own, because if they're talking about observations, well, that's subjective, right? And why would you need to wait until somebody can observe something when we have modern abilities to calculate, and we can figure out when seasons are going to be? Like, this isn't the first century, everybody.
It again. Oh, look at that. We have a 13th month. You kept waiting. Then we have a new moon. You waited for that. Now, finally,
13 month would have been calculated if they would have followed the Jewish calendar.
Finally celebrate. So thank you for your patience. It's the end of the 6th day. The sun is set. The barley is Aviv, and it's time for Passover edition Shabbat Night Live.
Woohoo, Saturday Night Live. I hope this has skits with Steve Martin or something. I'm kind of dating myself, but okay, so we have this frantic energy, which I'm guessing they're getting, okay, this was busy and now we're resting for the Sabbath. This is nice imagery. It's cool. Let's put away our keys. Let's spend time with the family. Let's have dinner. This is all great. I'm totally for this. This is what the Sabbath should be about. So I'm on board so far. Well, let's sit around and watch a teaching. Probably not going to agree with the teaching, but not a bad idea.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to the Passover 2022 edition of Shabbat Night Live. Please welcome my co-host, the COO of A Rood Awakening International, Ted Clayton.
Very fancy set looking there.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. And ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Finally, as Scott said earlier, your patience has been rewarded.
I mean, here's the thing. It's so their people had to wait around for them to declare this, right? So they have declared themselves the authority of the calendar. Okay. Interesting. I mean, you could say, well, you say that the Jews have the authority. I do. But the nice thing about the Jews having the authority is they figured this out. I know when Passover is 50 years from now, because they decided to mathematically figure it out so that we wouldn't have to rely on this sort of observation that is rather old-fashioned.
It is now Passover 2022. Passover then and now. And Scott, we have some tremendous guests that we're not only going to see a little bit of tonight, but tomorrow is a full plate of wonderful guests coming to you to give you the truth like no one else.
Hello.
Were you teaching?
No.
Else can. And of course, at 7 p.m. tomorrow night is going to be the Great Seder with Michael Rood. And guess what? Michael's are going to be making some special appearances on this Passover. You're not going to want to miss
very personality oriented,
because if you blink an eye, you could miss something important. This is going to be great.
If you blink an eye,
Scott, What about that calendar?
Is that a wink?
Oh, the calendar. Okay, so what we are doing now, if you're not familiar with the Hebrew calendar, this is what we are doing. So now we are on the month of the Aviv, 6022.
The month of the
so this
Aviv.
is because we had an Adar bet. And the fact that it does not, some people say, why don't you hold it on the actual day of Passover? Because as Michael says, you can't keep Passover anyway.
That's right.
You can commemorate it, you can celebrate it, but you can't keep the Passover.
Okay, so what they're doing is they're conflating whether or not you can do the actual sacrificial ritual and the commemoration of a holiday, which are really two different things. And they're actually making the antinomian argument. The antinomian argument is that you can't celebrate these holidays because you don't have a temple, right? So therefore you can't do it. But that's not the biblical example. Because, during the wilderness, nobody was circumcised, so they probably were not sacrificing a lamb because you had to be circumcised in order to eat the lamb. And so then is the idea that that whole time in the wilderness, they just didn't celebrate the holiday, even though it said it was a perpetual memorial, or did perhaps they celebrate it in a different way? The fact that you cannot sacrifice a lamb doesn't mean you can't commemorate what happened on the actual day. Why wouldn't you still do it on the actual day?
Because you just can't do it these days right now.
You just can't do it.
Everything is not in place. So we can't
Everything
do it. So we
is
just
not in
commemorate
place.
It, and so it's off a few days. That's okay.
Well, Scott, I can tell you.
Sure,
right
it doesn't really matter.
It is going to be a plethora of people, like I said a little while ago. First of all, starting off at 10 a.m., we're going to have you talk.
So we can just basically make up whenever it is we want to do things. But then these are the same people that are going to be very hot and bothered about you need to keep the Sabbath on the seventh day of the week. They're probably going to be very hot and bothered about don't keep Christmas. See, it's not very consistent.
Talking to Dr. Tom Lokensgard.
Yep.
Now, what are y'all going to be talking about?
We are going to be talking about how testing is, if you're not testing, you're guessing about your health. And right now, with all the things happening in the world, we need to make sure that we are as healthy as possible because there's stuff coming at us from every angle, and we need to keep the word going, of course, and to be there for our families. And this is the best way to do it.
And Scott, one of the things.
So they're some kind of intertwining some sort of health product, which is a little insidious to kind of put it in, especially to apply some sort of spiritual value to it. Not that there isn't a spiritual value to being healthy, but that's a little let's turn over tables in the temple kind of. It's wigging me out.
Things that's happening here with this is we're kind of have a theme, and it's a kind of a theme this year.
Why don't you have a theme?
Blood is possibly a theme because you're going to hear a lot of conversations about that. Ladies and gentlemen,
it's such an unusual topic for Passover.
Linnell Gordon, they're going to be with us also at 11 o'clock. We're going to take a break at noon tomorrow. At 1 o'clock, Keith Johnson, Yehuda Glick, and Hadass Glick are going to talk to us. It's going to be fantastic.
I really wonder if these are the
PM,
people normal
Nehemiah
names
Gordon,
or if they change their names, which that would be kind of sad. Why would you need to change your names to some sort of ethnic name? I also love the schedule with like the half old font and then the other half it's like we're going all King James with the and then the Edgewell that's a different font.
Be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere. I'm right here for SNL.
In the book of Leviticus, we are told that the life is in the blood, and that's speaking of sacrificial animals, that their life is contained in their blood, and once you drain the blood, the life is gone.
I mean, it's really referring to any animal because you can't drink the blood of other animals.
Your life is in your blood. So in other words, what we can see in your blood can determine what your health is going to be like, or even what it's like right now.
Well, okay, so we just had a major jump there, right? So they went from the biblical concept, which is that the life is in your blood. So therefore, we're supposed to not drink blood. We're not supposed to consume blood. That's the principle to extract. And we get from that because the life is in your blood and we shouldn't consume it, therefore, we should examine it and look for truth about health outcomes, which may or may not be scientifically true. I don't think it is really. I mean, it is probably to some extent because I know blood work is a thing, but that's not a biblical concept,
what it can be leading to, so that you never have to go to the doctor and have a surprise cancer diagnosis. You could have taken care of it years ago.
Sure, you could.
By just doing the proper testing and doing some preemptive medicine, some almost like you do, like you take your car in to get an oil change so you don't break down. And we're going to talk about that more tomorrow, but I want to introduce our guest for tomorrow who's going to talk about these things in depth. Please welcome Dr. Tom Lokensgard.
Shabbat, and the Lord has put together a bioelectrical chemical template and a biochemical template. So, and he's designed a perfect DNA system that we need to we can delve into and find out more about. There's power in the blood, like you said.
He was kind of all over the place. He's like, he could do that. And oh, there's power in the blood. Yeah, again, I have no problem with people trying to use critical thinking, skills, science to try to determine outcomes, but this is not a biblical issue.
And one thing we didn't talk about.
This poor guy is very nervous.
Let's talk about that. So this is a bonus then for tomorrow, because exactly. I don't think we talked about. We just taped our session, by the way, for tomorrow. But we did not talk about nitric oxide. So let's talk about
nitric oxide.
So tell us about nitric oxide.
There's a compound called nitric oxide. The people that have hypertension, and nitric oxide is a chemical that increases the.
I'd like to go on record too. We're 6 minutes into this. We haven't heard one scripture yet.
Endothelial tissue, your vascular tissue. You have 60,000 miles of arterioles, about 20,000 miles, which are.
I don't know how to vet any of this. I'm not a scientist. This could all be baloney. I don't know.
Vessels where the oxygen exchange occurs, and that is all controlled by endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which makes nitric oxide, and there are other compounds too that will help with nitric oxide. But that's to me, that's the power in the blood. And you gave a beautiful dissertation on that a while back on the power of the blood.
So the power of the blood is that we can get health outcomes out of it. Okay.
But then there's also other tests that we can talk about.
We're going to talk about those on Passover. So let's get into that a little bit. We don't want to
That's a great thing to do on Passover.
Essentially,
health and medicine.
Testing, if you don't test, you're guessing. That's what I always say. And unless you're testing, you're guessing.
Test, you don't know.
Right.
I actually do like that. If you don't test, you're guessing. I definitely believe in terms of testing prophets, right? If you don't test prophets, well, you're guessing that they're telling the truth. And so that's why I test prophets.
Right.
But you've got to test in the right medium.
Sure.
Which is blood, serum, blood spot, salivary, urinary, and we can even include hair.
Wow.
For toxicity. So
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so you can. There are different medium that you can test that reveals different information, but the cool thing about testing now is you used to have to go to the doctor, get a blood draw. Now you can do it in the convenience of your own home, because
you can poke yourself.
Companies that do test kits and they're very accurate, and they use anti-aging laboratory. They use anti-aging laboratory statistics.
What's an anti-aging laboratory statistic? So they don't use methods. They just use the math.
Is that the reference interval that you might see on a blood test is only really.
I mean,
it's not really the range you want.
I don't know. I may need to jump ahead because this is not Bible. This is just talking. So I'm going to keep going.
You got to go to somebody who's been trained in this.
Okay, fair enough, but
understand that, like you said, the blood tests are very common now to take at home. I saw one just the other week. I think because I didn't realize now you can take a drop of blood, put it on a piece of paper, and send it in, and you can get your vitamin D level checked. From home.
Right, or you can do your hormone evaluations on there.
Sure, you can. The lab work. Okay, all right.
D3 is not just a vitamin; it's a hormon, and it D3.
Wow.
I don't know if any of this has any legitimacy, but this is all just health stuff. I can't vet this. So.
Thank you for joining us for Passover 2022, and everyone will see you
10 minutes, 20 seconds in. As far as I know, there's been no scripture given. And we're not celebrating Passover when it is. We're making up a calendar, and we are talking about blood stuff.
An egg-laying rabbit and a Babylonian fertility goddess have to do with the resurrection of our Hebrew Messiah? Good question.
What does
In
that
the
man
resurrection
have
of
to do
Passover,
with
Keith Johnson leads us through the
Hebrew
dispensational
Messiah, that
disaster
strange
of mixing
person?
the holy with the profane, truth
Okay.
with mythology, and how a translational
Dun,
conspiracy
dun,
was
dun.
devised to crucify Passover itself.
Crucify
tell you right now what I
Passover
think they're
itself.
doing.
Okay, but these are the same people that are like, crucify Passover itself. But it doesn't matter when you celebrate it. I mean, a few days off, it's cool. You can't even do it anyway. See how it's like so inconsistent, right? On the one hand, they want to get you all hot and bothered that Easter is the worst thing ever and satanic. And on the other thing, the commandment to keep Passover on the 15th day of the first month, it's like, well, you can't really do that. So if it's not quite the 15th, if it's the 17th, the 13th, See, it's just so inconsistent.
They're trying to crucify Passover.
It is a
The
clever
resurrection
saying,
of
though.
Passover
I will say
with
that.
Keith Johnson is not for sale.
Special
and it's
guest
not on
love
YouTube.
gift
The only
teaching.
way to watch it is to receive it as a thank you gift from Michael Rood.
So you can't buy it, but the only way to get it is to donate to get it, which is basically buying it.
Donate a $50 love
See?
gift and we'll
Exactly.
send you The Resurrection of Passover on DVD or Blu-ray.
And look, I have no problem with people charging for things that they have to research, they have to do production, all of this. It's just so, like, why are you not just saying what the cost is? Why are you trying to make it, why are you being roundabout? It's a love gift, and we give it to you on the side. Just charge for it.
Blu-ray. Or for a donation of $100, we'll send you The Resurrection of Passover, plus a beautiful wall hanging featuring Psalm 50, verse 15.
That is kind of pretty, actually.
Call on
I'll
me
give
in
it
the
that.
day of trouble, and I will deliver you.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
Or,
that.
with a donation of $300,
You get a scroll?
we'll send you The Resurrection of Passover, the Psalm 50 wall hanging, plus a handheld Torah scroll. This
Which is great, because none of them can read it. But, you know.
breathtaking showpiece features all 5 books of Moses in Hebrew, wooden rollers, a velvet Torah cover, and an ornamental breastplate.
I mean, this is not the kind of thing that the average person really needs in their home as like a decorative thing. This should really be treated a little bit more carefully than that, because this is something that is representative of sacred text. Not that I guess it's not any much different than a Bible, right? But I do feel like people are going to start treating it kind of weird because they can't really read it. It could potentially take on kind of an amulet thing. It concerns me. You know, it may be fine. It might just be a pretty thing to have in your home. It might be decorative. I mean, I believe my father had one. He comes from a Jewish background. In the house, I know we had one similar, but I'm concerned when people, he could read it though. You know, I'm concerned if you can't read it, like, what is it doing? You know, what is its purpose? Because I'm concerned that somebody could use it poorly.
These gifts are a limited time offer from Michael Rood to thank you for your support. Make your donation today and receive the $50 gift, the $100 gift.
It is troubling too. We're 12 minutes in. We've heard no scripture, and we've heard basically 2 sales pitches. You
Or
know,
the
tells you
$300
something about
gift.
this organization.
These special gift collections featuring Keith Johnson are available only in April, and supplies
Their production
are
is
limited.
really high. I'll give them
Call now
that.
to receive your gifts. 888-766-3610. That's 888-766-3610. Or get your gifts online at monthlylovegift.com.
All right, so we're back. What's next?
Well, we have all kinds of great things planned for you tomorrow for Passover 2022.
You keep talking about tomorrow. Like,
lots of great
can we talk about
treats. And
something now?
speaking of treats, one of the greatest things we have tomorrow is a cooking segment with Linnell Gordon and Nehemiah Gordon. Welcome.
Hey, Scott, it's great to be here. I'm really excited about this.
Cooking is good.
One morning,
This should be all
my
right.
wife Linnell and I, we were sitting and we were studying. We do a morning Bible study every morning. We call it devotions. And we're reading what
We
I thought
call it
was one of
devotions.
those
That's what everyone
boring
calls it.
passages in the Torah. And it is for me. It's Leviticus chapter 2, which describes these different sacrifices.
Oh, yes,
And you
okay.
take, this amount
Everyone's
of
always
oil
dogging
and you
on
mix it in with that
Leviticus.
flour. And I'm like, let's get through this real quick. And Linnell
Wow.
turns to me and she says, this is a cookbook. And she decides to start making some of those dishes.
It sounds-
and that's where we got this idea of
It
doing
sounds like the
cooking.
Twilight
We're
Zone.
doing
It's a
cooking program,
cookbook.
which is an homage
Leviticus.
to biblical ingredients and biblical recipes.
So, I was like, I didn't. There are recipes in the Bible? What? This is a recipe. It's a real recipe. So it was really.
I don't
it
wanna
was
know what
really
she's
exciting
talking
for me.
about.
I was thrilled.
I'm trying to think
the
of what
recipes,
is
we
in
didn't
a
go and try and make
Leviticus
the,
that's a recipe.
altar.
I'm
the
thinking because I
incense.
just read through it.
Oh, no.
Just kidding.
No.
So what we did is we took ingredients that would have been available or could have been available in the biblical world.
Okay.
And then tried to make different dishes with them. And well, I should say she did, and I ate them, and they were delicious. And that's what we'll be sharing. And
I mean, it's a cute idea.
Anything in this program, in addition to my wife's amazing cooking, is Michael Rood is going to be joining us for this.
Really?
He's
But
gonna be
again, this
there,
feels
he's gonna
like
be
a sales
participating
pitch. Isn't this
along
just
with
a
his
sales
wife on
pitch
a
for a
I'm really
cookbook?
excited about
And maybe
that.
that's what the show is. Maybe the show is kind of like a
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're gonna
see
be
what
in the
we're
kitchen
working
when we
on.
do this. And well, Michael will be in the kitchen. Anna Lou will be there later when my wife serves the food. I learned this new word, plate. You plate the food. I thought you just put it on the plate. She's gonna plate the food and then bring it out to Michael and to me and to Anna Lou.
I mean, they're
and
cute.
we're gonna eat it. And
Wow.
I'm really excited about this.
So one of the really cool things we did was we had a lot of practice. And Nehemiah and I play at TikTok right now. We're doing some TikTok videos. So I would do all my practice on TikTok, and then I would post it in the Ambassadors Club because I'm an Ambassador Club
I like
member.
to make my own unleavened bread
and so
too.
one of the funniest things that you're going to see is we did 3 different types of matzah. One was given to me by my friend who grates. She grinds it herself from the berries. And the other was barley, which I got because we're doing the 7 species. That was important.
In Deuteronomy 8:8, it says the 7 produces of Israel, wheat and barley are 2 of the main produces of ancient Israel.
So if we're going to do that, then we need to bring them all in. So I was like, Nehemiah, we should do like barley, but we're really careful about our carbs. We're being really good about losing weight, and we're doing that by keeping our carbs low.
Okay.
And so I was like, yeah, there's
Notice
a lot
these
of
people
carbs
talk
in
a lot
all
about
of it.
themselves. I
But we have
mean,
to do
fair
it.
enough, but like,
But rather than doing that, we did a matzah with barley. And you have to just join us to listen to what's being said about that. Michael has his own rendition of what he
He's
thought
like
about
cracking jokes and everything.
And Nehemiah, I'll tell you what, when Nehemiah first tasted it, I did all 3 of them out. And I didn't tell him what was what. And he tasted this and he said, well, it is supposed to be the bread of contention.
The phrase in Deuteronomy is the bread of affliction.
bread of affliction.
And some people have actually historically said that barley matzah is specifically what that means, bread of affliction, because it doesn't taste that good.
Right.
And
Michael
that's
had a
not
really
why.
unique take on what he said.
And
You
we'll-
have to.
and we'll
you have
say
I
to
don't
do
that
think
for
it's
the
because it
program.
doesn't taste good.
Yeah,
I think it's
so
because of what it
it's pretty
represents.
exciting. I mean, this was really fun. If you would have told me, a few years ago I'm going to be doing a cooking show, I'd be like, can you get me a pillow?
If you would have
and a
told me,
blanket?"
if you would have told me a few years ago that we'd be 16 minutes in and we'd be hearing cooking, medicine, and books and no scripture, I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna skip ahead. So we have cooking.
It's beef bacon. It comes from a cow.
We're talking about, so beef bacon, yeah, that's what.
Okay, this is definitely not for me. Let's keep moving
But
on.
I'm told it's better than the pig, and it's actually lamb bacon.
It's excellent.
really good.
I've never heard of
Yeah,
lamb bacon. That
sharing
actually
some
sounds really
biblical
good.
Ingredients. And what I love about it is it's practical, because a lot of my teaching is very hypothetical, right? I'll never tell somebody, well, this is how you do this specific thing. I'll say, here's what the Bible says. Here's what the Hebrew means. But then you have to figure it out for yourself. Well, my wife actually shows you how to make these dishes.
They're easy. I mean, I'm just telling you, people were saying after, they're like, oh, what did you say? You said something about it being complicated. I'm like, babe, it is not. It is so simple. Now, he thinks everything I do is amazing, and that's the truth.
Well,
so you can't really judge.
I mean, they're really cute. I don't get me wrong, but this is a really long
Opinion,
segment.
don't ask. And when I say it's the best food in the history of food that any human has ever tasted, there's no hype.
And I'm not.
or
There's
exaggeration.
just
Let me
nothing
ask,
about
let me put
Passover
this in
here.
perspective.
Like,
Okay,
what's
just for
going
a
on?
minute, Scott. Did you tell me or did you not tell me last week that's the best thing I've ever tasted in my life?
Yes.
Okay, see?
But it was.
Yeah.
No, she keeps getting better and better.
There you go. And it's a new day. It's time for something better.
And so what I love
It's
about
chicken and cream sauce with tarragon.
Yeah.
That's what it
well,
was.
so what I love about
Salt.
what I love
Done.
about what we're doing here is that on the one hand it's practical, on the other hand it's an insight into the biblical world. And we did a lot of research in preparing for this.
I mean, I hope that's true and that they're not just kind of making this up. But on the other hand, I mean, a lot of cooking practices weren't really done back then. So I'm really curious.
And I had this thought and idea of what they had in the biblical world, and I didn't realize the extent of the trade
Right.
routes they had. And some of this comes out of archaeology, that there are things they discovered in archaeology, which when I studied archaeology as my bachelor's degree 20 years ago, well, they didn't have this, they didn't have that. Why not? Because, well, that was later when the trade routes developed. Now they've dug up places and they found things that you would have never expected in the Israelite period.
They're
and
being
even
very
earlier.
vague, so
And
I
they
hope
took
that
full advantage of that.
Absolutely. And license. A lot of artistic license
Well,
with
so the
that.
artistic license is they had gourds, maybe.
Oh, okay, see, so now, so it's so consistent, right? It's like, oh, this is so biblical. Oh, but artistic license. So, like, which is it? You know, are you trying to market this as something that's, because it's like if it's truly giving you some sort of insight into the way they live biblically, you know, you can't do artistic license. That kills the whole idea. It'd be like going to Colonial Williamsburg, where the whole thing is, you know, we're going to show you how it was like during Colonial Williamsburg, and then Thomas Jefferson drives down with a PT Cruiser, and it's like, well, you know, it's more convenient.
Maybe they didn't have butternut squash because that comes from the New World, but they had gourds.
They had gourds, so.
And so
Close enough.
it's an homage to the biblical ingredients. But I love it, a combination of something practical, of biblical ingredients.
Why don't
of
they just
biblical
stick with
cooking,
what they have?
along with an actual way to do it rather than just hypothetical studies.
It's so much fun.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, so much
I mean,
fun.
it's
And
cool.
eventually we will
Cooks-
put all the
cookbooks are
recipes
fine.
out so anybody can make it. But I'm telling you, it's not difficult. You know, it's really delicious.
Why would I
though.
think it's
Very
difficult to
simple
cook?
ingredients that people used. For instance, our butternut squash, all it is the butternut squash along with a little cream and browned butter. That's it.
And they had all
salt.
the and look.
They had that.
And the funnest
But
part.
it's so delicious.
The funnest part was eating it, for me at least. And I know Michael really enjoyed eating it.
And there are Easter eggs.
I don't know.
I just want to tell everybody, whoever you know, if you know what an Easter egg is.
Or to be fair, they're Passover eggs.
I didn't think about that.
Symbolically.
Okay.
Wait, you didn't think about the fact that you're referencing a holiday that they just condemned as satanic and crucified Passover. I understand the concept of Easter egg in a artistic work is like a hidden thing. It's like a cute thing to notice. But this is really funny. Couldn't you call it like an afikomen or something? I don't know.
Seriously, there are two in
A
the center. See if
Passover
you can
eggs.
guess if you can see what they are. If you can guess what our Easter eggs are.
Okay, very good. All right, well, we'll save the rest for tomorrow. There's the information on your bottom of your screen as to when you can catch this. All times are Eastern. If you see,
All right,
tune in
let's
for
just
it
keep
for
moving on.
Passover 2022. Linnell Gordon, Nehemiah Gordon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Very dramatic. We live in uncertain times. True. Always true, but true. We've never been more connected or more divided. No, that's not true. I mean, maybe in some ways not. What if the power to change everything was yours? Wait a minute. It's really not. Isn't the power to change everything from God? Why is it mine? The gospel of the kingdom in every country. Okay, I like that. In every home. Fair enough. The power is yours. Bring it to the world. Join the Ambassador Club. Okay, so we have another pitch for some sort of outreach effort. I mean, maybe it's a great ministry, maybe they're spreading the gospel, as they say. But I mean, 22 minutes, and yeah, this hasn't had a lot of content. This has just been a lot of fluff to recommend other products of theirs.
What do an egg-laying rabbit and a Babylonian fertility goddess have to do with the resurrection of our Hebrew
And we're back to that. And by the way, let's go back to that.
rabbit and a Babylonian
Okay, so the Babylonian fertility goddess thing is really kind of debunked in terms of the specific explicit connection to Easter that people have with it. It is true that there were fertility festivals, and it is probably true that a lot of customs from fertility festivals probably ended up coming into some of the Easter stuff, just like any sort of interaction with any sort of culture. But the reason why Easter was invented was because people wanted to commemorate Jesus Christ, and they didn't want to do it at the same time as the Jews, so they invented another time to do it, which is horrific enough. We don't have to tie it to some sort of pagan anything to say that it's not an work of rebellion and it has no place in our system to try to invent a new way of celebrating the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, or not celebrate, but commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus Christ when it's already commanded. We already know the time. And the only reason not to do it then is because you don't want to do it at the same time of the people in which God had chosen and he chose to be part of in his human form that got crucified. As if that makes sense.
Fertility in the red.
All right, so I think we've seen all this. This is just a replication, so let's keep going. It's the cute thing. It's the Torah I'm a little bit worried about. Okay, let's move on.
Well, welcome to the night before Passover. It's a special Passover edition of Shabbat Night Live. All the action happens tomorrow. And if you know anything about Passover, if you've ever been to a Passover Seder, which can be kind of long, you know that the kids kind of get restless, but the kids hang on because they know there's something coming at the end of the night. It's to find the Affliction. And so, you know, you can learn more about that in other places about the Affliction and what.
I'm just going to bring it up and not tell you anything about it.
It's all about family. It's all about kids. It's all about getting together to worship Yehovah and his gift of salvation to us. So Keith Johnson, thank you for joining us.
Oh, wait, all of a sudden we're like, Yehovah, where did that come from? So that must be a sacred name pronunciation issue. Yeah, I agree. You should focus on your children. It's teaching your children is a big element of Passover.
Hadass and Yehuda Glick joined us. They'll be on tomorrow with you. And we're talking all about that very thing, how Passover is about family.
All right, here we go.
Family, and I have to give a little bit of context because yesterday as I was talking to Michael asked me a question. He said, where did you meet Yehuda? And I told him, you know, we do a thing together. It's called the Father's Heart from Jerusalem, where we got a chance to talk to Yehuda and to Hadass. And I was telling Michael that the first time I ever saw him, he was up on the Temple Mount with no shoes, and we were talking about that. But then I told Michael another
yeah, what about that? That's kind of a weird thing to bring up.
Story. About 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call on Shabbat. And usually on Shabbat, I don't get a phone call. But it was on Shabbat, and I pick up the phone, and it's Yehuda Glick in Jerusalem. So it's after Shabbat for him. He's calling me. He says, my friend, I want to tell you a story. I said, okay, tell me a story. He says he's walking home from the synagogue on that day with a lady and his wife, Hadass. As they're walking home, another lady stops and says, hey, what did you need that matzah for? Now, what's the context? Yehuda and Hadass brought us into their homes. They're going to bring us into their home tomorrow, and they had to pre-record it because of the fact that they're Orthodox Jewish people, and they're not going to be doing this. We knew that ahead of time, but they asked if anyone had any matzah. So this lady says, I've got some. Usually no one would have matzah because it was before Passover.
Right.
They give her the matzah, and he says, so what did you need that matzah for? And Yehuda says, oh, I was on a television show that focuses on the Hebrew roots of the Christian faith. And the lady next to Yehuda says, my brother also does a show like that. And Yehuda says, what's your brother's name? And she says, Nehemiah Gordon. So Yehuda and Nehemiah's wife, sister go to the same synagogue. And they were testifying on the streets of Jerusalem about this ministry. They were declaring on Shabbat that we are a part of sharing information from Scripture on a ministry that focuses on the Hebrew roots of the Christian faith, a Rood Awakening. So sometimes, Scott, people say to me, Keith, you know, you're in Israel, you've got these Jewish friends, and that guy Nehemiah Gordon that you're hanging out with, he doesn't believe in Yeshua. You know, you got to bang him over the head. No. We are going to come together and find common ground. And what Yehuda and Hadass,
I mean, one of the common grounds is celebrating the holiday on the same day. Oh, wait, they don't do that.
Are going to do tomorrow, which is amazing to me. When I called them and I said, hey, listen, you all did this for Yom Teruah. We did the deal for the Maccabees. We did another series. Would you be willing to do this with Passover? And they said, a Rood Awakening? Absolutely. Now, I got to tell you something. They've had offers from other television stations that they won't go on because they have been at sometimes bushwhacked. That the Christians will come on the television and surprise them and beat them over the head, and they're like, we don't want any part of that. What they know about this ministry is there's respect, mutual respect, and we want the information, Scott.
I mean, I can see where he's getting at. I think it's reasonable, you know, when you're talking to people. If you really do want to know the information of what what traditional Orthodox Jewish people do, and Yeah, they're going to want to do that in security. They're not going to want to have somebody give them some sort of preachy message. But my question is, I mean, not what does it matter as if it doesn't matter at all. It is part of the heritage of the church, but what are they claiming? So therefore what? Therefore you should try to behave like that because you're talking about people that are so offended by Jesus that you can barely mention him. You have to be very coy about it. And then you're going to borrow religious practices from this group for what reason? What are you getting out of this? Like, are you just getting cultural history, or are you trying to learn the best way to celebrate the holiday from people who don't even accept a third of the Bible?
We want the experience of understanding what's happening in Israel. That's why I do tours to Israel. I love being in Israel with people. The God of Israel, the people of Israel, and the land of Israel. This is when I first met Michael. In the land of Israel, where I got a chance to understand God's time. So can I do this? Can I read this?
Please do.
This passage.
Yes.
This is so important.
We are now
We're going to Isaiah
27
56.
minutes
Which Bible do you got this time, Scott?
in, and we're now
King
getting a
James.
first
I'm loving that.
scripture.
I'm loving that. Let's go to Isaiah.
Of course, you would love the King James. It's very typical of these sort of groups that they go to
Chapter
that kind of
56.
translation.
This is a really powerful passage for our friends that are listening that are going to come tomorrow to Passover, then and now.
Isaiah 56.
Isaiah
and,
chapter 56.
And where are we going?
Verse 1.
Verse 1.
Can you read the first two verses?
Thus saith the Lord, keep ye judgment, and do justice. For my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man that doeth this, and the Son of Man that layeth hold of it, that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and keepeth his hand from doing any evil.
Let me read 3 and 4. Let not the foreigner, say foreigner,
who
has joined himself to
Why does he need to repeat that? He just read something.
Yehovah say,
very-
Yehovah will surely separate me from his people. Who are his people? Don't say that if you're a foreigner. Do not say that he will separate me from his people. And then what does it say after that? Verse, let's see here. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I'm a dry teeth. For thus says Yehovah, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths and choose what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant, to them I will give in my house and within my walls a memorial, and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name which will not be cut off. Read verse 6 for us.
Also the sons of the stranger.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of scripture
that join
here. We're
themselves
getting
to
into
the
7
Lord, to
verses so
serve
far.
him and to love the
So I'll
name
give
of
him
the
credit
Lord,
for
to be
that
his
now
servants.
that we're
Everyone that
28
keepeth the
minutes
Sabbath
in.
from polluting it, and taketh hold of my covenant. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in the house of prayer.
Continue.
Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon my altar. For mine house shall be called a house of prayer for all people.
So,
Okay.
I consider myself a foreigner. I found out a long time ago. I shook the family tree. No Jews fell out. I got no Jewish blood. I'm not even a United Methodist pastor anymore. I am free to connect myself with Yehovah, surely just as one of his people. And when I read verse,
I mean, you're not really a foreigner anymore because nobody has the status of foreigner anymore because there's neither Jew nor Gentile under in the new covenant and under the blood of Jesus Christ. There's no such thing as a foreigner. That's why you go to all of the world to preach the gospel because a foreigner doesn't exist unless you perhaps are going to use that to talk about an unbeliever.
verses like this, Scott, that says it's not about all of the rules and all of the regulations. This is one thing Michael says all the time. It is not what you have to do. It is what we get to do. We, you and I
mean, I agree with that attitude. It's not, the obedience is not about obedience. Your attitude should be that you want to embrace God's morality and you should feel so empowered that God has revealed to us morality and revealed to us the right way to behave, and we should be empowered by that.
get to connect with the God of Israel, the people of Israel, the land of Israel, celebrate his feasts in his time.
Okay, so here we have celebrate his feast in his time, but he just said earlier that we can't actually do that, right? We heard that. You heard him earlier say we can't actually celebrate Passover. So either we can or we can't. It's not consistent. And when it says, oh, we get to connect with his people, with his land, I mean, in a sense, yes, but That's not what it's about. If you preach the gospel to somebody in, I don't know, Japan, right, and they never get to visit Israel, it's not like they have any less of a relationship or anything is missing. The fact that the Mediterranean climate is a certain way has no bearing on your relationship with Christ one way or the other.
Tomorrow, we are going to be in the time of Passover with our friends
In
Yehuda
the
and Hadass,
time.
who did it ahead of time, but they will be celebrating just like they're going to share with us tomorrow. They're going to invite us into their apartment, and I get to ask questions like kids ask, like, what is this about? And they're going to tell us. Passover then and now, it is amazing. I hope people will take advantage of this opportunity.
Beautiful. Thank you, Keith. And yes, we hope you will join us tomorrow for Keith Johnson.
So they're making it out like it's almost like some sort of zoo exhibit. It's like, isn't it great that we have the gospel so that we can go and we can observe what the Jews do in their natural habitat? I mean, that's essentially what they said. They're like, you can connect with the people and connect with the land, and here we are, we're going to observe. But what they're not saying is, therefore what? Like, therefore what?
And Yehuda and Hadass Glick in their home in Jerusalem doing Passover, talking all about family. Don't miss it. There's the information on the bottom of your screen. Remember, this is Eastern time, so we will see you then tomorrow for Passover 2022. Sign up now if you haven't done already, PassoverCharlotte.com. See you tomorrow.
All right.
Yeshua said, Abraham saw my day.
And immediately you have this complete pageantry oriented, right? You have somebody who's dressed up kind of quasi first century. He has like the whole set. It comes across like, I don't know, community theater and things like that. But, whatever. Pageantry. Let's go.
And rejoiced. When did Abraham see his day? When the king of righteousness, the Melchizedek, brought forth bread and wine.
Okay.
And when he brought forth bread and wine, it says that the Melchizedek blessed the Most High. And that prayer is still remembered and is what Yeshua said when he blessed the Most High the night of the Last Supper, the night before the Passover lambs were slain. Yeshua said, Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech ha'olam.
I mean, sorry, the pronunciation is just wow.
This broken bread represents my broken body which is broken for you. By my stripes you are healed. Do this as often as you do this in remembrance of me. And then he took the cup.
Is that quite exactly what I said? But okay.
And the words of the Melchizedek, he blessed the Most High. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Borei pri hagafen.
I mean, these are all traditional prayers, and it's very possible that that's what Jesus Christ said, but it's not actually written there. So he's kind of giving you the false idea, or that he could be misleading you that those traditional Jewish prayers are somehow canonical when they're not. Now, there's nothing wrong with them. They're beautiful prayers, but they're not biblically preserved. So he was like, Abraham did the same prayers as Jesus did. Okay, well, first of all, I don't even know if Abraham spoke Hebrew or even the same dialect of Hebrew as Jesus did. And didn't Jesus speak Aramaic, et cetera, et cetera. I guess Jesus probably wouldn't have spoken Aramaic as a prayer. But anyway, my point is that there's an exactness here in the way that there's an exactness missing in the way that he's talking.
Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua said, this represents and has represented from the time of Abraham the renewed covenant. My blood will purchase for you.
Okay, so the idea is from the time of Abraham, it represented the blood of Jesus. You could argue that Abraham was given this information. Fair enough, but that's a leap. It's a leap to make that Abraham would have been aware of that. And yeah, it's tough. I think what people really dislike is the idea that there were multiple covenants made, but it's hard to not think that there weren't multiple covenants made. And you could say that the reason why you have to be careful with such as you don't want to think, well, at some point God decided, well, this is bad, and so let's do a new one. And fair enough, that's obviously wrong. And the idea that the new displaces the old to the point where the old is like worthless, or there's nothing from the old in the new. There's lots of ways to parse this out, but this is very simplistic.
As often as you do it in remembrance of me. Shabbat Shalom.
And welcome back to this special edition of Shabbat Night Live. We're talking all about Passover 2022 tomorrow, happening at PassoverCharlotte.com. And I'll tell you what, folks, the brimstone, as Michael Rood would say, is about to hit the fan. So what do you do when the brimstone is about to hit the fan? Well, some folks think that, number one, you get out of the cities. Number two, you learn how to be self-sufficient. And you
so now we're going to do fear. Okay, so this is the other thing. So far they've appealed to you from we know the truth, the church is lying to you because Easter's evil, and we have this deep-rooted connection that's so powerful. Only Jews are only working with us. They're not working with anybody else. And now we're getting to fear. Be scared. The world's a horrible place, and we're going to protect you.
With other believers, you live out on the land, learn how to do things without the assistance
At least that's
of
what
others.
I'm guessing.
And one person in particular that was spoken to about this for Passover 2022 was Nehemiah Gordon. You spoke with Nate Petrosky.
Yeah, Nate is this gentleman he was a contractor, and he was working. He was a slave to the 80-hour work week. And he decided, do I want to spend all of my time and energy for the rest of my life working for other people?
No,
or do I
but this sounds like a self-help book.
Own? And he ended up moving out to this property in West Virginia,
okay,
about 100 acres, and he lives off the land.
I mean, that's great, but this is not going to be the story for most people. I mean, or a lot of people, you look at homesteading and whatnot, a lot of people do these things and they have these grandiose plans and they spend a lot of money leaving cities, and it doesn't go very well for them. I mean, look at how many people died when settling the West or settling America. Like, building your own homestead's not super easy or even attainable for a lot of people, and it's not good advice, like, on average. The idea that you need to be afraid of what goes on in the world and therefore you need to flee to the mountains, like, this is not living in boldness. This is not, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is not, do not worry about tomorrow, or a lot of the verses that Jesus Christ said. Like, there's nothing in the Bible that gives you the idea you need to be paranoid. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with trying to be self-sufficient, but what I am saying is that it might be wrong to guilt people into thinking the only Christian way is to be self-sufficient or to strong arm them too much about it. And often it comes with products, either how to do it products or personal ministries to encourage you. So you have to get instructions from them and things like that. It gives you a dependence not on maybe the CEO you work for, but it might give you a dependence on a specific teacher or a specific community. You gotta be careful.
And it's pretty incredible. I mean, in a sense, he's living the dream that many of us have. Now, he's off the grid. It doesn't mean he's trying to live in the Stone Age, right? He uses modern technology. He has his TikTok channel, which he has a TikTok channel with 1.7 million followers.
Now, what's his handle? You remember what it is?
So again, he's kind of that's kind of caked in there is a little bit of, wow, look how effective of a ministry you could do if you get out there. And again, there's nothing wrong with promoting people who are successful, but this is to the general public, right? And the way it was pitched at the beginning was, you're worried about culture, right? And so therefore, maybe follow this example. Oh, a little dodgy.
I think it's Nate Petrosky.
Just Nate Petrosky.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can find him there. He is, and I was watching him for a few months, and I started to get these little hints. I'm like, this, and he doesn't talk anything about religion, anything about his faith. He's just talking about how he lives in a place where you can't get electricity, so he set up solar panels. He lives in a place where you can't.
And this is interesting too. So this is the second time where you've talked to the Jews, and they're so happy that we're not getting bludgeoned. This guy is out there with 1 million followers, and he's not talking about his faith. And I don't necessarily think you always have to wear your religion on your sleeve, but isn't it kind of interesting that they don't really want to speak to their belief systems?
Can't get water through pipes. So he gets rainwater and how he purifies it, he talks about. And I'm starting to get these hints as I'm watching him over several months on TikTok. This guy's got to be a Torah keeper. I just know he is. And then one of the things he does is he roasts coffee beans, gets the green beans and he roasts them.
Wow.
And I noticed that there's a sign that says he brews coffee, and I'm like, yep, he is a Torah keeper.
He's a Torah keeper because he used a pun. I mean, I'm guessing he's right, but that's a little interesting.
Knew it. And I decided to reach out to him and invite him to come on the program.
Because, I mean, Hebrews is a book in the New Testament, and, you know.
And we're going to be interviewing him for an hour, talking about how it is he went through his journey. And his journey is absolutely incredible. And the really incredible thing is he doesn't talk about this on his channel with his 1.7 million followers, because they don't want to be preached at. He drops little hints. Sometimes they're not so little. People are like, where's your Christmas tree? He says, well, I don't do Christmas, and if you want to know more...
Wait a minute, so then he says he doesn't preach on his channel, and then he says he explicitly tells people his beliefs on his channel. So this is not consistent. I would say that it's basically preaching on your channel in a good way.
Or here's a channel where I talk about my faith, and he has a separate channel for that. And I watched all those videos.
Wait, so he has a separate channel about his faith that he advertises on his main channel, and yet he's saying he doesn't talk about his faith on his main channel? So what was his point?
It's pretty incredible, his journey. He has this incredible testimony where he shares about, and I don't want to give too much away because people have got to tune in and watch it, but he has this incredible testimony about how at one point in his journey, and he was raised in the Christian church, but he talks about how at one point in his journey, he truly believed this Calvinist idea, what they call Reformed theology, that it's not what you do in order to be saved, but God decides before creation who's saved and who's not, who are the elect.
Oh, that's predestined
and
idea.
He completely accepted that doctrine, and he came to the conclusion that he was predestined for hell, which is kind of surprising because most people who espouse that doctrine will very humbly say, for no reason that I can explain, God has chosen me for eternal salvation.
I mean, it's not quite as simple as that. However, it is a concern I have about Calvinism and Reformed theology that would annoy some Calvinist people I know, and sorry.
And all these other people for hell. He decided he was predestined to hell, and he was going to a church, and they treated him horribly, quite frankly. And I think that is what pushed him in the direction of doing more searching, which eventually led him in the direction of coming to Torah and looking back at the what some people might call the Hebrew roots of the faith. And
what some people might call, isn't it what you guys call
it? He's just an incredible guy. My wife is the CEO of a technology company, of a software company, and she watched some of his videos, and she said, you know, he kind of plays the country bumpkin. He has this very kind of calm and slow way of talking. But she said, that guy's brilliant. I mean, some of the things he does technology-wise, and that's what she knows, are things that you know you would get paid a whole lot of money if you worked for her company or a similar company doing. And he's using all of that to live as much as he can self-sufficiently. That doesn't mean he's growing, you know, eating every piece of food he grows, right? He buys stuff and he buys technology for sure, right? But he's in a sense, and I was talking to Michael about this. Michael's here in the studio. People can't see him, but I was talking to Michael about Nate. And what I found out is that Michael is, I think everyone knows this, has been going through a long period of recovery. And during that recovery, he has a lot of free time, and he spends time watching homesteading programs. And I know he doesn't do TikTok yet. I'm still trying to get him hooked on that. But
homesteading is really such a big trend. And I can understand why for a lot of cultural reasons. My concern is when you tie in these trends with some sort of biblical imperative. Thankfully, so far, I haven't seen too much of that in this segment.
Homesteading programs on different streaming services. And I told him about Nate. He's like, this is exactly the type of thing I love. He said a lot of the people who are doing this are connected to Torah because it's all part of the idea of, you know, one of the really popular themes in media.
Let's see where this is going.
And you ever ask yourself, why zombies? Why are all these movies about zombies and these television shows about zombies and video games about zombies? And psychologists have looked into this question, and one of the answers they come up with is that zombies represents this industrial lifestyle that we live in. You know, a lot of people, they work in a cubicle, and they're all kind of interchangeable, and you're walking down the street and driving your car in heavy traffic, and we're the zombies. Right?
That's an interesting take. I mean, generally, whenever I've thought of zombies from a literary perspective, I always think of zombies similar to werewolves or other things where it's the idea that there's an inner beast within us and there is a system that could perhaps take over people near you. Like often zombies in works represent things like Nazism or political systems where people are concerned, oh, even my next door neighbor might get swept in this
right?
nonsense.
And we're afraid of that because, of course, we're afraid of it. Who wants to be a zombie, right? It's this kind of cookie cutter lifestyle that you're forced into. That's what it means to be a zombie. And what Nate has done, what a lot of these homesteaders have done, is they've broken that mold. They've broken out of the cookie cutter, and they've gotten back to the roots of what we are as human beings.
Okay, so here we are at the root of what we are as human beings. See, this is where it gets toxic. So now you've just said that everybody who isn't like this is more of a zombie or is a zombie. And this is somehow God's purpose. God's purpose is for us to be agriculturally oriented or separated or on our own. Well, he's like, this guy's 100 acres of land. That's not going to work. Not with how many people are on the earth. Right? We can't all have 100 acres of land. This is not going to, this is not a system that makes any sense. There were cities in the Bible. God never tells people that they can't form cities. Certainly, there's a lot of negativity about cities because there are harmful things that happened in cities. The gathering of people can result in a lot of negative behaviors, but the isolation of people can result in a lot of negative behaviors too. We see that in the Bible as well. We see both. Here's a good example. You see Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Horrible city, the most depraved, and it's such a horrific environment where people are stirring up each other for the worst forms of evil. Okay, Lot and his daughters escape. They go to a cave. They feel like there's practically nobody left on the earth, and his daughters seduce him right in the middle of nowhere. So sin will follow you wherever you go. Like, don't panic that because you're in an urban environment, you're naturally less righteous or less holy than somebody who lives in the middle of rural South Dakota. I don't find the biblical basis of that.
In a sense, they're living this dream. It's not easy, right? Can you imagine living in West Virginia and all of your electricity comes from solar panels and it's freezing cold? I mean, that's got to be tough, right? It's got to be challenging. But he's able to do it, and sharing that with the audience, I think it's hope. That's what it is for me. That's why I watch these programs. I think that's why Michael watches these programs. It's hope that there is another way to live, that there is a possibility of doing that. And look, I'm a city slicker. I've lived in cities my whole life. I'm not going anywhere. I've lived in apartments almost my entire life.
Okay, so again, this is kind of that double speak. So at first he was like, this gets back to who we are as humanity. He said something to that effect. And then he's like, well, I'm not going to go anywhere. So, like, what are they trying to say? It's so back and forth.
But that's the reality I've lived with. But it gives me hope to know that there's another way to live. There are other ways to survive in this world.
Yeah, you don't have to live in a city.
Torah communities, because
Shock.
that's the way it happens, right? So, Christian folks like myself, we discover there's something more than what we understood about the Bible. We start looking deeper into it.
Yeah.
We begin to understand the feast days and the biblical, the kosher laws and all that kind of thing.
The feast days that you can't do anymore, remember.
And we sort of begin to separate ourselves from the crowd. And the more you look into the Bible, the more separate you become. And some people see that as really odd. Like some people might say Nate is really odd, but you see that as a sign of hope. That
It's
there is
absolutely
another
a sign
way.
of hope. And I'll say something else. So here's a man who's one of the top, I don't know what the exact statistics are, but with 1.7 million followers.
That's a lot.
He's among the top people on this entire social media ecosystem. And I think it also gives some inspiration that, that one of the top people doesn't have to be, some woman doing lewd dances or,
I mean, he's got a good point there.
Somebody, giving real estate tips or something like that.
Well, that's not really that different than what he's doing. He essentially is giving real estate tips, right? Because he's telling you a way to financially do things and logistical things for your home. It's not less moral to learn how to sell real estate.
It could be somebody who's doing his best to live an honest and wholesome lifestyle.
As if people who don't sell real estate are living an honest and wholesome lifestyle. Again, this is very strange.
And doing it in the cleanest and purest way that he knows. And he also loves God and he loves the Torah. And that is an inspiration to me.
You know what that tells me also? If he has 1.7 million followers, a lot of people want to be like him.
Oh, absolutely.
And so let's talk more about that tomorrow. Nehemiah, can't wait. So there is the information at the bottom of your screen.
I mean, that's a good point, right? A lot of people want to be like that. But this is the danger, right? Not everybody can. And not everybody should necessarily. And also, I really get concerned with too much conflation of something like choice of living situation or things like that and righteousness, right? We need to be careful about that.
Nate Petrosky talking with our very own Dr. Nehemiah Gordon. And can't wait. There it is. You'll see it tomorrow.
Just keep going. Whoa. Now we have a countdown. What's this countdown for? It's very dramatic. I'm going to skip ahead. It's the final countdown. What is going on? I mean, I guess this is a countdown so that they can have somebody call. But what do you call? Oh, that's to give money. Made possible by viewers like you.
Days and 3 nights from...
Okay.
Well, Michael often says you can't get 3 days and 3 nights from Good Friday to Easter Sunday. Not even Einstein could do that. And that is the premise of his Chronological Gospels.
Uh-oh. So we're going to do this. Okay. The 3 days and 3 nights controversy is based on a specific read where you believe that Jesus Christ said, I'll be in the belly of 3 days and 3 nights, which must mean 72 hours instead of potentially meaning an expression, which is on the third day. So yes, in fact, you can get that. Albert Einstein could get that if you just understood it was an idiom, if you accept that explanation.
This is what it looked like, what it looks like now, and what it looked like before is what Keith Johnson has in front of him. Keith Johnson, Nehemiah Gordon, welcome.
Hey, shalom.
Thanks for having us.
Certainly, you have one of the
It's weird that they keep cutting segments and then coming back and it's the same people. It just seems
original
strange.
manuscript hardcover versions
Don't
in
touch
front
this
of you.
thing.
Ooh, okay,
Look, I've got something from Michael, and let me just tell folks right now, we're about to read a verse here.
Okay.
And as I'm reading this verse, I've had dreams that
uh-oh.
Michael would be in the studio. I sent him a note. I said, Michael, I've had dreams about you. And sure enough, I'm looking at him, folks.
Yes.
He's right there. And I want to read this verse, if I can, in front of Michael from Chronological Gospels. Nehemiah and I decided to take a deep dive look at just one verse.
Yes.
Okay.
But what Michael does is just amazing.
And
It
you're
says
presenting this in detail tomorrow for Passover.
Why did he just make a big deal about he had a dream that he was going to do something that he knew he was scheduled to do with somebody who could potentially be there who was involved in a project as if it was a big deal? It would be like me on getting up and it's like, I had a dream that I was going to speak at Sabbath services and my wife was going to sit in the audience. It's like, okay, well, that's what always happens.
tomorrow.
Right?
Okay.
Okay.
It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Okay.
Wait, he doesn't know if it's tomorrow? I thought he just wrote the chronological gospel. Anyway.
Matthew 12:38. Certain of the sages in Puroshim answered Yeshua's charges against them, saying, Master, we want to see, and Michael adds the word real. Doesn't say that in the King James. Doesn't say that in any other translation, but Michael italicizes
Wait. So he's just adding words to the Bible. Okay.
the word real because he's looked ahead and he knows that in Matthew 16 that
Wait, I want to go
real,
back. Hold on.
Because it doesn't say that in any other translation, but the word real against them, saying, Master, we want to see, and Michael adds the word real. Doesn't say that in the King James. Doesn't say that in any other translation, but Michael italicizes the word real.
Wait, does he italicize or does he add it?
Because he's
Right?
looked ahead. And he knows that in Matthew 16,
He adds it.
that there's actually the word a sign from heaven. I know he knows. He studied this in depth. It says
He studied it in depth so that he could add words that don't exist in the manuscript.
this, to see a real sign from you. But he answered and said to them, an evil, adulterous brood seeks after a sign, and there shall be no sign be given to you but the sign of the prophet Jonah. And this is the verse Nehemiah and I are focusing on.
Here we go.
Just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so shall the Son of Man shall be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Dr. Gordon, why was I so intent upon searching this verse? What What did I keep saying to you? Why is this such a big deal?
It's not.
Well, I mean, it's the one sign that Yeshua gave. So if it's Good Friday to Easter Sunday, that's parts of 2 days, a full third day, and then 2 full nights. Well, where's the missing third night? And I actually called up my mother-in-law, who's been a Bible teacher, a missionary out in different countries, and I asked her. We were doing the study, and I said, "Can you help us understand this?" And there's a third night missing, and she said, "Well, you have to understand that the Jews had a different way of counting."
No, that's not what they would say. It was an idiom. We'll see if they give the actual explanation you'll get from
Tell me
scholars.
all about how the Jews counted. I think I know a little bit about that.
Right.
Well, yeah, because you reject their calendar.
But when it came down to it, she then said, "You know what? You're right. That explains the 2 partial days. It doesn't explain the missing third night." And she said, "Let me go and do some more study." And what it really came down to is, and I said to her, "Look, either Yeshua got it wrong."
No.
And it wasn't 3 days and 3 nights, right?
Nobody
He thought
would.
that's what was going to happen, but he was wrong. That's possibility number one. And obviously, she's a devout Christian. She doesn't believe that. Or you've got it wrong in how you've interpreted this.
No, that's a false dichotomy. It could be that they have it right in their interpreting, and you don't understand their interpretation.
And you can't get away from the tomb was empty on Sunday morning. That's very clear in the Gospels.
Right.
So I said to her, "So where does it say that he was crucified on Friday?" And she said, "You're right. Let me go look it up and do some more study and get back to you."
So this random, his mother or something? Like he was talking about, this doesn't sound like a scholar. This doesn't sound like you went to, the head of some big university or anybody with credentials that would give you like a hard thing to follow. And I'm not saying that everybody with credentials needs to be listened to, but wouldn't they be the best person to get the actual reason why people believe this rather than just some random person?
And we're still waiting.
Okay. So the
Ha ha ha! Isn't it so funny? Again, why does she have to prove it to you? Look it up. Figure out why other people believe it.
Good Friday that we espouse in every church in the entire world does not exist in the Bible
Well, it doesn't if you don't accept their calendar,
that
yes.
we all adhere to.
But remember, Passover doesn't really exist in a form we can currently celebrate either, according to them.
Well, it exists within the life of Christian churches around the world, and this is the problem. If you grew up in church, which I didn't, but she did, if you grew up in church or you've been going to church for years, you know for a fact that he was crucified on Friday because every year you commemorate that event. And you know that he rose on Sunday because every year you commemorate that event. And then when you actually open up your New Testament and you look for where it says that, well, that's where things get a bit tricky because you don't find it.
But you don't. But what are they saying? They're saying that people just made it up?
Right, you don't find it. Talks about preparation day.
Okay, here we are.
And Michael has a whole bunch of teachings on that, and other
Oh,
people
yeah,
do,
'cause-
and it's in the Chronological Gospels.
Sure.
But it never says Friday. And,
Right.
And so there, and that's what I don't want to go into too much detail because we go into it more in the study.
Well, we will go into this detail. Why did I ask Dr. Gordon? I asked him this question first.
It also doesn't have the vowels that this person is so obsessed about in terms of reading God's name. That wasn't preserved in the text either.
When he was just Nehemiah Gordon from the Hebrew University. He just had his master's then. He took me to Jerusalem. We went to the tomb, and he tried to explain it then. Well, now that he's Dr. Gordon, I said, let's ask the question again. And you know what he did? He did what he does best. He opened up manuscripts. He looked at language, history, and context. He does an amazing job of giving us an understanding of how time is reckoned in the Tanakh. And what's so amazing about what Michael did is Michael was able to fix the problem as it is. I mean, he fixed it.
He fixed the Bible.
Right?
Yeah.
What I love about why we call it going beyond 3 days and 3 nights, and this is also related to my friend Michael. He's got this whole issue that he talks about in terms of Jonah, the sign of Jonah. And Nehemiah, I asked Nehemiah, I said, when you heard Yeshua say this, 3 days are the sign of Jonah, what do you think? And he tells a phenomenal story tomorrow, phenomenal, about his relationship with the book of Jonah.
Oh,
so between what I've been
relationship with the
focusing on this,
book. Okay.
I got to say, for the last year, I've been in the Chronological Gospels. I encourage everybody to get it. It is a phenomenal work.
So this is another thing. So far, this is just another product. You know, all of this is supposed to be promoting things that they're going to do as part of this big celebration. Fair enough. But everything is monetized, like, or close. Even the TikTok guy. Okay, he's got 1 million followers. Is he paying them to be involved in the show? Maybe. I don't know. Is there a kickback because it's his business? And I'm not saying that's a problem if there is. But you know what I mean? Like, this all feels very commercial, like transactional. Transactional is a good word for it.
Michael told me yesterday, 40 years of study to be able to come up with it's a masterpiece. And what it helps us understand is the life and ministry of Yeshua, so that when we say words like Passover, when we say words like Shavuot, when we say words like Yom Kippur and all those other words, it's not foreign. This is the culture that Yeshua lived in. And so why wouldn't we want to know it? Because
it's not only the culture that he lived in, it's God's holidays that have been possibly commemorated since the beginning of the earth and continue to be celebrated.
Because the church has done a phenomenal job of separating us from the language, history, and culture of the very one.
But see, again, it's not about that. It's not about being separated from the culture. It's about being separated from the morality. It's about being separated from the commandments, right? It's not sure, it's horrible that they were so anti-Semitic. It's horrible that, you know, the Jews and the Christians had such bad relationships at the beginning. I mean, Jews and Christians were just at each other's throats, and so it was horrible. But on the other hand, it's not a cultural thing. Like, I mean, it's not like you're going biblical culture, yes, right? It's terrible they separated you from biblical culture, but that's not what they're talking about. They're not talking about the Day of Atonement. They're talking about Yom Kippur. They're not talking about Pentecost. They're talking about Shavuot, right? And so all they're doing is giving more of a Jewishness to this, which gives even more of a reason for people to say, well, I'm not Jewish. It's like the guy had to be at the beginning, he had to apologize. Well, I'm a stranger. Well, no, it's either you're part of the biblical culture or you're not. And if you're part of the biblical culture, then it's not about being Jewish. It's about being biblical. It's about being moral.
That they say that they're interested in. And so, again, what Nehemiah has been amazing. He's a scholar of scholars. And Michael says he's the most honest scholar he's ever met. And I have to agree with Michael. You're pretty doggone honest, sometimes too honest. I gotta be careful that he doesn't say too much, because sometimes he's so honest. But the blessing is we get a chance to look at this Jew and Gentile together.
That's a little weird.
And I'll just tell you, tomorrow's going to be a blessing.
Yeah, I love it. And there's a trifecta of biblical understanding of the Gospels, if you will, that I find.
Trifecta.
And the Chronological Gospels is just one piece of it, a masterpiece in and of itself. But the second piece is the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar.
Of course, because they can actually correct what Jews have preserved. So at the same time, since they're talking on both sides of their mouth. So at the same time that they're using Yom Kippur, Shavuot, they're actually interviewing Orthodox Jews to talk about a Seder ceremony, which is a rabbinical ceremony. It's a beautiful ceremony, but it's not directly biblical. You know, it is biblically minded. I don't think it's inappropriate, but it's a rabbinical mandated ceremony. So they're going to do all that. That's the fun stuff. But when we get to the calendar, we're not going to let you boss us around about the calendar. No, we're going to come up with our own. Oh, and we're not going to calculate it correctly. Oh, and by the way, none of this matters because you can't celebrate Passover anyway.
The calendar that I joke has the longest title in the history of the world. So you get the calendar together. So what I do is when we're trying to do the calendar for every year that we do with the ministry, we just got finished doing it, and now it's getting printed. And so I get the calendar from the previous year, the Chronological Gospels, and the 70-year ministry chart that Michael has done. That basically summarizes what's in the Chronological Gospels.
70-week ministry.
The 70,
it was like 70 years.
70
years.
Well, we wish it was that long, but it wasn't. It was 70 weeks.
He was in a hurry.
See, you told me he's honest. What are we going to do with that? So anyway, so you get all three of these.
I'm glad he corrected
it. You can pretty much walk through every week of what Yeshua did. And like Michael says, the screenplay comes alive. Yes. And so we can't wait for tomorrow for that to happen.
I feel like that's probably reading a little bit too much if he can get on that that micro level. I don't think the Gospels are that specific. I would find that hard to swallow, that you could get that exact.
When you and Nehemiah get together and tell us all about Beyond 3 Days and 3 Nights.
You know, one of the things Keith asked
Beyond.
is, of all the things Yeshua could have pointed to in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, that have 3 days and 3 nights, or several different events.
Yes.
Why did he point to Jonah? Like,
that is a good
so
point.
obscure. And to me, the obvious was the answer was obvious.
What you going to tell?
Right? I mean,
what are you going to tell tomorrow?
I'll tell tomorrow.
Okay, so hang on to that.
There were three major things that connected that why Yeshua would point to Jonah of all things, and I'm like, why do we need to talk about this? It's obvious.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So tune in for the obvious tomorrow with Keith Johnson and Dr. Nehemiah Gordon.
I have to say,
Beyond
that was
3
a pretty
Days and 3
decent
Nights
stinger.
at Passover 2022. There's the time. We're going to have it right down on the bottom.
We
of the
are
screen.
50 minutes in, and we've heard 7 verses, or 11 verses now.
Okay, so go to. Like
I'm going to skip ahead. All right, let's keep going.
The Chronological
so let's get the
Gospels
pitch.
Bible is changing lives all over the world.
Changing lives because we understand the correct timeline of when Jesus preached, as if that important. If it was that important, then why wouldn't the Gospels have been preserved chronologically in the first place?
Putting everything the Messiah did in exact chronological order and explaining the behind-the-scenes truth of what the Messiah did.
The behind-the-scenes truth? It's not like a movie.
When he did it, and why. The timing of it all means everything. And
the timing of it all means everything, and yet we don't have to celebrate Passover when it actually happened because we can't do it anyway.
Now, the Chronological Gospels can be easier on your eyes. The larger print edition.
I mean, it tells you something about their age level, to be honest.
And every page appears exactly the same as the original. So you can follow along with others who have the regular size version.
Oh, okay.
The Chronological Gospels.
Wow, that typesetting is okay.
Larger print edition also has wider margins to write notes. And the premium quality paper means you can highlight without soaking through. Plus, the larger print edition lies flat, so you can teach without having to hold the book open.
$70 though. That's a pretty expensive book.
The Chronological Gospels larger print edition is a big and beautiful coffee table book, measuring a full 12 inches tall.
This is oddly specific.
Study the Bible with clarity and ease.
I love the size of this book. This is 9 by 12. The paper is perfect because it doesn't bleed through when I write on it.
We already have established this. Is this really an ongoing issue? I've never had that much issue with bleed through with books.
As it is on the smaller version, and I can
just
stand
heard that.
back and I can teach from it, and it's the perfect size. I pray thee, of whom speaks this prophet?
Order the Chronological Gospels larger print
that was just a
edition
random,
by phone
like...
or online. You'll get 40% larger type than the original. Call 800-788-7887.
And again, for your gift of instead of just the price.
7887.
You know, they're selling it at a price. Again, you can sell a book, but be honest. Sorry, just be honest. And again, all this was a pitch. Every single thing of these things was a pitch.
Good question.
And we got this again. So now we're getting, so we've really been pushing this whole thing, the resurrection of Passover, a holiday that we don't bother celebrating on the right day because we can't celebrate it anymore. I'm sorry, I know I'm repeating that, but it's absurd.
We'll send you 15. A scroll until breast next.
All right. Let's get going.
Well, if you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, you ain't seen nothing yet, have you, Ted?
No, sir, not indeed. It's going to be fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you can't miss a single moment of Passover 2022, Passover.
I think I can.
Now, if you haven't signed up for Passover, it is not too late.
Don't pass over it.
Go up online to PassoverCharlotte.com, I believe.
Yes, it is.
PassoverCharlotte.com, and you can sign up to watch one of the greatest Passovers you have ever seen. And yes, ladies and gentlemen,
we're very humbled.
Michael Rood will be on Passover 2022 this year. He will be with us, and I am so excited about that.
Very personality-oriented again.
Once again, we have Tom Lokensgard that's going to be with us. We have Nehemiah and Linnell Gordon. They're going to be fixing a Passover meal as it would have been fixed back in the day. So that
No, they said not. They said it was artistic license. That's not what they said they were going to be doing.
The then part, okay? Then we're going to break for lunch, and then we're going to have Keith Johnson, Yehuda, and Hadass Glick. They're going to come back and tell us how Passover is being celebrated over in the Holy Land. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want authenticity, this is the place to be. This is where to come, because this is where you're going to find it. And then we're going to have Nehemiah Gordon and Nate Petrosky. They're going to be talking about how to survive in these uncertain dates and times. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, it's a video that you're not going to want to not see. Okay.
You're not going to want to not see. But again, it's fear. So what we have, we can see the pitch of what this group is about. This group is about, we've got some secret knowledge that you can get in because we're going to connect you to this culture that you've been ripped apart from because of the evil Christian culture, and we're going to reveal what they're up to so we can observe them like zoo animals, and then we're going to make a big to-do about our extrapolations of Scripture, that we have some insight, and we're going to add to Scripture. We're going to add words. We're going to add timings that maybe weren't there. We're going to do all of that. We're going to establish our own calendar. These are all isolating tactics, right? And then we're going to scare you into thinking that, the right way to be a good Christian is to, run out into the woods and start a farm. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that kind of wigs me out.
After that, we got Nehemiah. And then after that, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a panel discussion with Scott Laird.
All right, I think this is just a recap of what we saw already. Let's see the ends.
And remember, go to PassoverCharlotte.com, as Ted has already said. Sign up. It's all free. You get a whole bunch of little bonuses as well, in addition to 20% off on our store. So, PassoverCharlotte.com. We will see you tomorrow. It all starts when, Ted? When do we start?
10 o'clock.
10 a.m.
It's just a lot of commercial stuff. This is really the biggest thing. It's product. It's a well-oiled machine. And again, I have nothing wrong with people that want to make products. I don't even care if that's your main MO, is you want to make good products for Christians. My issue is more the way it's going about, a lot of the practices being used, the double speak, the inconsistency. On the one hand, it's like, what are these holidays? Are these moral imperatives? Are they just fun cultural practices? Are they everything? Can I understand Jesus without them? Or what? You're not really giving clear direction. It's muddy, it's confusing, and I just don't think it's very helpful. So anyway, those are my thoughts when looking at the video. I hope you found this helpful, and perhaps it's going to make you look at things a little bit differently, and we'll see. I'll do another one of these days.